Coming the time, BD women ain't gonna need no men. Coming the time, BD women ain't gonna need no men. 'Cause the way they treat 'em is a low down, dirty sin. It's a sin. Sure can't understand. Pretty women, Lord, you sure can't understand. They got a head like a sweet angel, they walk just like a natural man. Pretty women, they all done learned their plan. BD women, I tell ya, they all done learn their plan. They can lay their jive just like a natural man. BD women, you know they sure is rough. BD women, boys, you know they sure is rough. They all drink up plenty whiskey and they sure will strut their stuff. They work and make their dough. BD women, they work and they make their dough. When they get ready to spend it, they know where they have to go. BD women, they ain't gonna need no men. Women, boys, they ain't gonna need no men. 'Cause the way they treat 'em is a low down and dirty sin. Low down and dirty sin.
Rolling Stones' last truly great single, Start Me Up, from their 1981 Tattoo You album, boasts of the sexual gifts of the protagonist's partner. "If you start me up, I'll never stop," sings Mick Jagger. "You make a grown man cry, you make a dead man come." It's naughty and it's catchy, and the song owes a lot to one Lucille Bogan, the writer of the song we've chosen to open our show with. My name is Brett Locke.
And I'm Ted Brown. Welcome to the Vinyl Closet.
Lucille Bogan is the least remembered of that great triumvirate of early female blues singers, Lucille Bogan, Bessie Smith, and Ma Rainey.
All three either engaged in same-sex relationships themselves or wrote about them as part of their social universe. We'll hear more about the others later in the show. Lucille was most celebrated for her sexually frank and explicit lyrics, which included tales of satisfying men with her strap-on penis, and how once she gets started up, she could keep going on till the cows come home. Indeed, the immortal line, "I make a dead man come," is Lucille's, not the Rolling Stones.
She contributed to a genre now known as dirty blues, an expression of the blues which incorporated taboo topics of the time like sex, sexuality, and drugs. The artists might not have gotten radio play, but they were very popular on the jukeboxes and as music hall performers.
Also, because blues was considered race music, it wasn't subject to the same scrutiny the mainstream entertainment industry was.
So ironically, not being given consideration by the racist establishment actually gave the blues artists a wider scope for social and artistic expression.
In our opening song, BD Women's Blues, from 1935, Bogan makes a prediction that one day women will not need men, particularly because of the appalling way men treated women. Lesbians, she notes, or BD women, BD standing for bull daggers or bull dykes, were already leading the way, liberating themselves from sexual and financial reliance on men. From an LGBT perspective, these artists have left behind a small but rich legacy of representation on vinyl, a representation that all but disappeared as modern music became mainstreamed and only re-emerged after many decades in the late 1970s.
In tonight's program, we'd like to take you on the journey from this early form of urban blues and towards its evolution into rock and roll, the form that more than anything else gave birth to the modern popular music that is all around us today. Much of the recording, in both senses of the word, of LGBT experience of the time is owed to black musicians and songwriters. In the preface to his biography of Little Richard, of whom we'll hear much more later, author Charles White gets to the nub of the issue.
Racism is woven so deeply into the fabric of America that even decent people don't realize their attitudes are racist and that they are contributing to the outrageous holding down of people based on their color. The creators and innovators of African American musical forms, the only significant musical revolution since the Strauss waltzes, should be venerated and honored. But Paul Whiteman was crowned the king of jazz, Benny Goodman the king of swing, and Elvis Presley the king of rock and roll, while black geniuses like Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Billie Holiday, Joe Turner, and Little Richard, who created America's only classical musical form, have always been denied true recognition in their own country.
While perhaps a little overstated in the rhetoric, what White says is essentially true. Right from the beginning, the search was to find an acceptable, and by acceptable we mean white face, to front new music to a mainstream audience. The mainstreaming meant the censoring of risque and controversial subjects, the subjects so fearlessly tackled by our early blues heroes. And of course this also meant the representation of lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people was almost entirely written out. But let's stay in the moment for a little longer and take a look at some of the music that was almost lost.
For our next song, we'd like to do a song called Sissy Man Blues, originally recorded in 1935 by Kokomo Arnold. It tells the story of a man unlucky in love who petitions God to be a little more creative in supplying a solution to the poverty of his romantic life.
I believe I'll go back home. Yes, I believe I'll go back home. And confess to my good gal, Lord, woman, I know I've done you wrong. Done a ring as far as China, find me a good gal over there. I'm gonna ring up China, find me a good gal over there. Cause a good book, it done tells me, gotta find me a good woman somewhere. Halloween church bells was tolling one long Sunday morn. Those Halloween church bells was tolling one long Sunday morn. That old dirty deacon come by, he stole my woman and now she's gone. This morning, pork grinding business in my hand. You know what I mean. I woke up this morning, pork grinding business in my hand. Cry, Lord, if you can't send me no woman, please send me a sissy man. Cause I need someone tonight, someone to hold me tight. Lord, if you can't send me no woman, please, please send me a sissy man. Oh yeah.
Kokomo Arnold was not alone in regarding it as simply common sense to turn to a sissy man for the satisfaction of sexual needs. His song proved very popular at the time and was covered by several other artists like George Noble, Connie McLean's Rhythm Boys, and Pinewood Tom.
Pinewood Tom, it turns out, was the stage name of the influential folk blues artist Josh White, who recorded under this pseudonym at first to hide his musical career from his mother, who regarded it as
the devil's music.
Josh White himself was not gay, but he must have had a reason to record a version of Sissy Man Blues. While Kokomo Arnold eventually gave up music for a more profitable career as a bootlegger during Prohibition, Josh White became a very respected musical figure, mentoring a young Bob Dylan, for example. He was also a close friend of President Roosevelt, and the future civil rights leader with Martin Luther King, Bayard Rustin, himself a gay man, once played in White's band, which demonstrates just how much a part of this culture gay people were at the time.
Obviously, we must be careful of thinking that this was some sort of lost golden era, free from judgment, or that homosexuality was regarded as entirely normal.
Sexual identity has always been complicated. For example, Bessie Smith, her own sexuality hard to pin down, could be quite scathing of others. In her song Foolish Man Blues, for example, she sings,
"There's two things got me puzzled. There's two things I can't stand. A mannish acting woman and a skipping, twisting, woman-acting man." Whether she was playing to the gallery or simply didn't like certain stereotypes is hard to say. It's a reminder that tolerance is not the same as full acceptance, and as the language of this next song shows, even internalized homophobia was as much a factor then as it is today. In this song, recorded in 1930 by George Hanna, the singer laments his inability to perform sexually with women and blames his failure on hanging around with too many freaks, a term used at the time for gay men, and their freakish ways rubbing off on him.
At least he realizes there's no turning back.
Oh, yeah. They call me a freakish man. What more was there to do? They call me a freakish man. What more was there to do? Just 'cause they said I was strange, that did not make it true. You know she went off to the mill to have her coffee ground. You know she went off to the mill to have her coffee ground. Because my wheel was broke and my grinder could not be found. Well, you mix ink with water, bound to turn it black. Yeah, if you mix ink with water, it's bound to turn it black. You run around with funny people, you get a streak of it off your back. There was a time I was alone, my freakish ways to see. There was a time I was alone, my freakish ways to be. But we're so common now, you get one every day in the week. I had a strange feeling this morning. Guess I've had it all day. I had a strange feeling this morning. Guess I've had it all day. That I'll wake up one of these mornings, that feeling will be here to stay. Oh yeah.
On the periphery or not, a social curiosity or not, so much part of the scene were we that there was even scope for gay-sploitation.
Yes, when the Harlem Hamfats, a dirty blues band playing the clubs, realized one of their tunes had spawned a dance craze with trendy gay men, it didn't take them long to punctuate the groove with some saucy lyrics as the dancers put out their cans, of course slang at the time for arses, and were asked suggestively, "Can you take it?" These sort of dances definitely were an antecedent to the disco revolution still many decades away.
Music historian Peter Shapiro notes in his book The Secret History of Disco that while 1970s disco star Sylvester put his gospel-trained voice at the service of gay desire, he was by no means the first. Before him was Harlem Hamfat singer Freddie Half-Pint Jackson, the most outrageous performer of the era, 5 feet tall, hence his nickname, allegedly gay and a performer of risque material in a high falsetto voice, frequently dressed as a woman.
The Garbage Man is a prime example of the saucy wordplay and risque puns worthy of a carry-on movie.
Do you like trash? Stick out your can, here comes a garbage man. Yeah, stick out your can, here comes a garbage man. Can't nobody do it like the way he can. A nickel's a nickel and a dime's a dime. If you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Stick out your can, and here comes that garbage man. Yeah, stick out your can, here comes a garbage man. Can't nobody do it like the way he can. I'm not the plumber or the plumber's son, but I'll plug that hole till the plumber comes. butcher or the butcher's son, but I can hold that meat till the butcher comes. Stick out your can, here comes that garbage man. Whoa, stick out your can, here comes the garbage man. Can nobody do it like the way you can? Roses are red and violets need plucking. I'm sweet 16 and ready for college. Come and sweep me off my feet. Can anybody here take my junk? I'll line the gunner for you, honey. Drunken, honey. Stick out your hand, here comes the garbage man. You're gonna dust my room. Can't nobody do it like the way we can. Stick out your can, here comes that garbage man. Stick out your can, here comes that garbage man. Can't nobody do it like the way he can. You can pick up my can anywhere.
We tend to think of history as a linear development, and we forget the little bumps, detours, and islands of tolerance that appear in history for reasons we don't always fully appreciate today. Today, mainly because the homophobia and misogyny in a lot of contemporary rap and Jamaican dancehall music is such a topical issue, many people assume that these prejudices reflect wider and more long-standing social attitudes in black communities.
But these records show people have forgotten a time when it was only in black music that LGBT people got an unambiguous mention, and only in the surrounding subculture where LGBT people were tolerated as simply part of the social furniture. So much so that, as our next song demonstrates, we were regarded in a matter-of-fact way, hardly believable today.
In this song, Hello Central, also known as Sissy Blues, a 1926 record by Gertrude Ma Rainey, the singer uses a central telephone operator as a sympathetic ear for her love troubles.
I came home last night, it was icy cold. I went home last night, but I won't no more. Hello Central, it's about to drive me wild. Can I get that number, or do I have to wait a while? I dreamed last night, I was far from home. I woke up and found my man in the city's arms. Hello Central, it's about to drive me wild. Can I get that number, or do I have to wait a while? Oh well, some are young and some are old. My man says Sissy has got good jelly roll. Hello Central, it's about to drive me wild. Can I get that number, or do I have to wait a while? My man's got a sissy, his name is Miss K. He shakes his thing like a jelly on a plate. Hello Central, it's about to drive me wild. Can I get that number, or do I have to wait a while? Now all the people ask me why I'm so alone. A city shook his thing, and now my man is gone. Hello Central,
What is most interesting about that song is the attitude that all's fair in love and war. The fact that her man left her for a sissy doesn't seem to trouble Ma Rainey any more than if he'd left her for another woman. The sexuality of her love rival is barely remarkable, and it is the fact that her man is gone that troubles her more than who her man has gone off with.
History records that Ma Rainey herself was not averse to a little same-sex romance and was quite familiar with the rewards of sapphism, though not entirely open, but then, as this next song shows, not entirely closed either. She dares those around her to prove she is a lesbian, while at the same time playfully giving them every hint she can get away with. This is Ma Rainey's Prove It On Me Blues.
Went out last night, had a great big fight. Everything seemed to go wrong. I looked up, and to my surprise, the gal I was with was gone. Where she went, I don't know. I mean to follow everywhere she goes. Folks say I'm crooked, I don't know where she took it. I want the whole world to know. They say I do it, ain't nobody caught me. You sure got to prove it on me. Went out last night with a crowd of my friends. They must have been women, 'cause I don't like no men. It's true, I wear a collar and a tie, makes the wind blow all the while. Don't you say I do it, ain't nobody caught me. You sure got to prove it on me. Say I do it, ain't nobody caught me. Sure got to prove it on me. Went out last night with a crowd of my friends. It must have been women, 'cause I don't like no men. Wear my clothes just like a fan. Talk to the girls just like any old man. Ain't nobody caught me, sure got to prove it on me. Sure got to prove it on me. In the advertising poster promoting the record of Prove It On Me, we see Ma Rainey in her collar and tie flirting with some dainty women and being watched by a policeman. Look at that cop watching her. What does it all mean? The advertising copy asks. Can the cop prove it on her? They almost did prove it on her in 1925, when Ma Rainey was arrested when Chicago police responded to a neighbor's noise complaint. They found a party in full swing, the room full of naked women in intimate situations. She was arrested for hosting an indecent party and spent the night in jail, bailed the next morning by her friend Bessie Smith. Author Sandra Lieb suggests in her book Mother of the Blues, A Study of Ma Rainey, that Rainey and Bessie Smith were at one point lovers. Bessie Smith wrote a song which is likely based on this or a similar event. In the song Jailhouse Blues, Smith imagines being in jail and asking the jailkeeper to provide her with some companionship. Lord, this house is gonna get raided. Yes, sir. jail with my back turned to the wall, to the wall. 30 days in jail with my back turned to that wall. Look here, Mr. Jailkeeper, put another gal in my stall.
Fortunately, not everyone had to resort to begging a jailer to provide them with a lover. Many found companionship in more domestic surroundings, like the characters we meet in this next song, a crossover vaudeville blues tune. We've based our version on a recording by Manette Moore and her Swing Shop Boys, but the song has been covered countless times in many different ways. It tells the tale of two old maids, and what they get up to in their folding bed. It's so touching how they say they look like two old mutts, but still appear in their dreams as pretty Pekingese.
2 old maids in a folding bed. One turned over to the other and said, I need some loving, that's what I need. Talking about the maids in the bed. 2 old maids, sweet and tender. 2 old maids go on a bender. 2 old maids, they're a solid sender. Talking about the maids in the bed. In a folding bed, one rolled over to the other and said, Hiya honey, how you fix the money? That's all I wanna know. 2 old maids in a folding bed, one turned over to the other and said, I admire your playful tactics dear, but you must stop swinging on my ear. Bed. One looked over to the other and said, the night was cold, I thought I'd freeze. In my dreams you were Pekingese. 2 old maids in a folding bed. One's eating walnuts, the other one said, you remind me of 2 frail mutts. Move your fingers with your hammer, I'll crack your nuts. Over 40, 2 old maids, hot and sporty. They've got the nerve to be kinky and naughty, talking about the maids in the bed.
The year was 1952. For mainstream audiences, music could not have become more anodyne and sentimental.
One of the year's biggest hits was How much is that doggy in the window? The one with the waggly tail, by Patti Page. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, rhythm and blues audiences were being treated to something else altogether. Big Mama Thornton's You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, crying all the time.
The contrast could not have been greater, and it should be no surprise that youth audiences were gravitating towards the latter.
But the musical evolution would require 2 steps before it became mainstream. The first step had the lesbian and gay subculture described by Lucille Bogan, Ma Rainey, Bessie Smith, the Harlem Hamfats, Kokomo Arnold, and others right at the center. Nothing illustrates the process of this first transition more than this dirty blues song by Kokomo Arnold, the writer who gave us Sissy Man Blues.
This song is called Busy Booting, but unlike Kokomo's other protagonist, the one who asked God to at least send him a sissy man if there were no woman for him, the protagonist of Busy Bootin' has women queuing up at his door, which he tells us about, shall we say, in unminced words. Though the song we're going to play now is not especially well known, fans of early rock and roll will instantly realize the significance.
Busy booting and you can't come in. Busy booting and you can't come in. Busy booting and you can't come in. Come back tomorrow night and try it again. I met your mama in the alleyway. I met your mama in the alleyway. I met your mama in the alleyway. She's catching monkeys both night and day. Don't you remember last Friday night? Don't you remember last Friday night? Don't you remember last Friday night? You go out in the street and you wanna fight. Busy booting and you can't come in. Busy booting and you can't come in. Busy booting and you can't come in. Come back tomorrow night and try it again. Don't you remember when my door was locked? Don't you remember when my door was locked? Don't you remember when my door was locked? I had your mama on the chopping block. Busy booting and you can't come in. Stop knocking on my window pane. Busy booting and you can't come in. Come back tomorrow night and try it again.
Yes, if you haven't worked it out already, that song was adopted and adapted, cleaned up and re-rendered as the more innocent You Keep a Knockin' But You Can't Come In by one Richard Wayne Penniman, better known to the world by his stage name, Little Richard.
Now, Little Richard was by no means an overnight sensation. His early records did not set the music world on fire and bore little resemblance to the songs he is famous for. One day his producer accompanied him to a performance and saw an entirely different Little Richard. His live show was bawdy and energetic, everything his recorded takes lacked.
His producer realized if he could capture the electricity of the performance, but with the song sanitized for a mainstream audience, he'd have a winning formula. And that is how Little Richard dipped into the dirty blues canon and made it clean. But that is only half the story. To go with the flamboyant songs, although made lyrically tame, there had to be a match in persona, and this is where another almost forgotten gay figure needs to be acknowledged. S.Q. Reader, known professionally as Escarita, is the character in our story who taught Little Richard to play the piano in his trademark way, and, you might say, in fact, to be Little Richard. Escarita had extravagantly coiffed hair, layers of pancake makeup, and wore outrageous clothes and jewelry. Little Richard describes how they met up.
I used to sit around the all-night restaurant at the Greyhound bus station in Macon, Georgia, watching people come in and trying to catch something, have sex. I'd sit around there till 3 or 4 in the morning. Wasn't nothing else to do, 'cause everything was closed. One night I was sitting there and Escarita comes in.
The story continues.
So Escarita and me went up to my house, and he got on the piano and he played One Mint Julep way up on the treble. It sounded so pretty. The bass was fantastic. He had the biggest hands of anyone I've ever seen. His hands were about the size of 2 of my hands put together. It sounded great. I said, "Hey, how'd you do that?" And he says, "I'll teach you." And that's when I really started playing. I think Escarita was crazy about me,
In every sense, Escarita was the prototype Little Richard. But with the success of his protege, Escarita was eclipsed, remaining forever a cult figure. Though he continued to make eccentric and creative records, at the top of the pop heap there was only room for one Little Richard. And if Escarita dropped it, Richard certainly picked up the ball and ran with it. Blues icon Muddy Waters sang, "The blues had a baby and called that baby rock and roll." But it is possible to be more specific. In its June 2007 edition, Mojo magazine made a go at defining the 100 records that changed the world. In the introduction to the article, they wrote,
"In the beginning was the Word. The Word was a wop-baba-loo-bop, a wop-bam-boom, a torrent of filth wailed by a bisexual alien. Little Richard's Tutti Frutti smashed down the doors of culture and ushered in an attitude we call rock and roll."
Recording engineer Cosimo Matassa recalls watching Little Richard perform the song in a club before it was recorded.
See, Tutti Frutti was a club song with no real end. A guy in a blue suit might walk in and you'd put in a verse about a guy in a blue suit. So it was whatever Little Richard wanted it to be at the moment, and at that moment it was pretty dirty.
Capricorn Records boss Phil Walden agrees. He remembers,
Little Richard just destroyed me. He was doing a lot of songs that he later recorded, but off color, like Tutti Frutti. Tutti Frutti, good booty, Miss Juicy is Lucy, Miss Tight is all right. It ain't the ocean, it's the motion. Oh, all kinds of things. And he would wave to all the gay guys, his sisters, in the audience.
When Pat Boone covered that song, he possibly imagined a flavor of ice cream. Little did he know just how fruity the song really was. Here we go.
In the beginning was the Word, a torrent of filth wailed by a bisexual alien. And the Word was a wop-baba-loo-bop, a wop-bam-boo. Tutti frutti, oh fruity, a tutti frutti, oh fruity, ooh, tutti frutti, oh fruity, tutti frutti, oh fruity, tutti frutti, oh fruity, a wop-baba-loo-bop, a wop-bam-boo. Got a gal named Daisy, she almost drives me crazy. Got a gal named Daisy, she almost drives me crazy. She knows how to love me, yes indeed. Boy, you don't know what you're doing to me. Tutti frutti, oh fruity, yeah. Tutti frutti, oh fruity, ooh, tutti frutti, oh fruity, tutti frutti, oh fruity, tutti frutti, oh fruity, yeah. A wop-baba-loo-bop, a wop-bam-boom. Oh yeah. Oh Lucille, you don't do your daddy's will. Oh Lucille, you don't do your daddy's will. Oh, you went out and married, but I love you still. Yeah, I woke up this morning, Lucille was not in sight. I asked my friends about her, but all their lips were tight. Lucille, please come back where you belong. I've been good to you, baby. Please don't leave me alone. Ow! Well, the long, tall Sally, she's built for speed. She got everything that Uncle John need. Oh, baby. Yeah, hey, baby. Yeah. Ooh, baby. Having me some fun tonight. Yeah. Well, a long, tall Sally, she's built for speed. She got everything that Uncle John need. Oh, baby. Yeah, hey, baby. Ooh, baby. Having me some fun tonight. Yeah. Well, I saw Uncle John with bold-handed Sally. He saw Aunt Mary coming and he jumped back in the alley. Oh, baby. Yeah, hey, baby. Ooh, baby. early, early morning till the early, early night, when I saw Miss Molly rocking at the House of Blue Lights. Good golly, Miss Molly, you sure like to ball. Yeah, but when you're rocking and a rolling, can't hear your mama call. Yeah, Mama, Papa told me, son, you better watch your step. If you knew about Miss Molly, I'd wash my palm myself. Good golly, Miss Molly, you sure like to ball. When you're rocking and a rolling, can't hear your mama call. Yeah.
Now those songs were almost entirely sanitized for mass consumption, but a few notes and clues about their origins remain. Little Richard is most candid about Lucille. In his biography he reveals,
Lucille was after a female impersonator in my hometown. We used to call him Queen Sonia. I just used the riff of an old song of mine and slowed it down, and I'd go, Sonia, and I made it into Lucille.
While we couldn't say if the name Miss Molly was intentionally modelled after the old term for cross-dressing men, or molly houses, which were sort of 19th century gay brothels, Little Richard does make a point of stressing the significance of the word miss in his lexicon.
The gay thing was becoming a big thing in my whole town. I was with gay people a lot because I'd fallen into their bag, you know.
This sounds a bit like the story told by George Hanna in Freakish Man Blues.
I used to tell my mother about the gay scene, and she'd tell me to hush. I'd tell her about all the words they would use and how they called everybody Miss Thing. And they'd call up, and instead of saying, Bobby, how you doing? They'd say, oh, Miss Thing.
In Long Tall Sally, even if it escaped Pat Boone's notice when he covered it, the story seems fairly clear. Why is Uncle John ducking in the alley with Sally, who we learn is unusually tall?
And bald.
It seems Uncle John is hiding an affair with a cross-dressing man from Aunt Mary. Perhaps like Ma Rainey's husband, Uncle John found
Sissy got good jelly roll. But if Little Richard was guilty of cleaning up his own lyrics and reformatting songs he'd learned from the juke joints, even he couldn't take rock and roll that final step into the mainstream. The fact of the matter is, the world wasn't altogether prepared for, as rock critic David Kirby put it, the flamingly gay Little Richard, sister of the club queens, singing a paean to hiney poking.
Just as we should heed our earlier caveat of not confusing tolerance with acceptance, we should also be careful not to confuse openness with pride. While Little Richard was strangely candid about his sexuality, he was never entirely comfortable with it. There was always a tension between being gay and his religious upbringing. And in the end, it was religion that won out, at least for a time. In 1979, the now Reverend Richard Penniman told the crowd at a revival rally that rock and roll is evil, and he declares,
If God can save an old homosexual like me, he can save anybody. Of course, it wasn't long before the lure of the devil's music beat God again, and Little Richard was back, thumping out Tutti Frutti and hollering, Good golly, Miss Molly, in a series of film cameos in the 1980s and 90s.
But back in the 1950s, what the mainstream wanted was a clean-cut, heterosexual, all-American, and above all, white performer. For the time being, the best America had to offer in this regard was, well, we just mentioned him, Pat Boone. Boone made a mint covering Little Richard's songs and sent his saccharine versions to the top of the charts. If it had been left to him, rock and roll would have been a passing fad between Lawrence Welk and Andy Williams. But fate had other plans, and rock and roll took another step forward towards conquering popular culture.
Back in Memphis, Tennessee, a recording studio owner by the name of Sam Phillips specialized in cutting tracks for black rhythm and blues artists like Ike Turner, B.B. King, and Howlin' Wolf. But all the while the canny businessman couldn't help thinking, if I could just find a white man who had the Negro sound and the Negro feel, I could make $1 billion. and then Elvis Presley walked through his door.
You might think the story ends there, but it doesn't. There is at least one gay-related curiosity in Elvis Presley's canon, and it is surprising that no one paid it the slightest bit of mind, least of all Presley himself. It is revealed in the album notes of his collection of Lieber and Stoller songs that he was present during the writing of Jailhouse Rock, and he gave it his approval. It really is a very interesting song when you look at it carefully. In case you haven't listened to it in a while, let us refresh your memories. It goes like this.
The warden threw a party at the county jail. The prison band was there and they began to wail. The band was jumping and the joint began to swing. You should have heard this rocked out jailbird sing, let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Everybody in a wholesale block, they were dancing to the jailhouse rock. Father Murphy played the tenor saxophone. Little Joe is blowing on the slide trombone. The drummer boy from Illinois with brass boom bang. That whole rhythm section was a purple gang. Let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Everybody in a wholesale block, they was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Number 47 said to number 3, well, you're the cutest jailbird I ever did see. I sure would be delighted with your company. So come on, do the jailhouse rock with me. Let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block, they was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Fat Back was sitting on a block stone, way over in the corner, weeping all alone. The warden said, hey buddy, don't you be no square. If you can't find a part to use a wooden chair, let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block, they was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Gypsy Henry said to Buzz, for heaven's sake, no one's looking out, a chance to make a break. Bugsy turned his shifty and he said, nix, nix. I wanna stick around while I get my kicks, so let's rock. Everybody, let's rock.
Everybody in the whole cell block, they was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Let's rock. Everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the whole cell block, they was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Dancing to the jailhouse rock. Dancing to the jailhouse rock. Dancing to the jailhouse rock.
Yes, in retrospect, it isn't hard to see what Time magazine described in 2011 as a sly homosexual innuendo in the lyrics of Jailhouse Rock. It is one thing to believe that the jailbirds, forced into a same-sex environment, might dance together out of necessity, but it is something else to believe they're flirting. "You're the cutest jailbird I ever did see," was entirely innocent, knowing the reality of prison life.
And then, even as Shifty Henry pleads with Bugs when they have a chance to make a break, he is rebuffed, and his fellow inmates declare that they'd rather stick around and get their kicks. None seem desperate to get back to wives or girlfriends for that purpose, and strangely, though some may have nodded and winked, no one said a word.
Presley went on to mega stardom. From here on, the momentum was unstoppable, and rock and roll became the music of our time. But what of the unsung hero of this story, Escarita, the man who taught Little Richard to be, well, Little Richard, the man who put the boom in the Awat Babaluba?
He never compromised. He never went mainstream, and like many true pioneers like Kokomo Arnold, he all but faded from view. Escarita had a hard life, leaving and returning to the music business, punctuated by odd jobs and even time in jail. He found a modest revival in the 1970s, playing gay clubs in New York City, where sadly, in 1986, he died, a victim of the AIDS epidemic that decimated his generation of gay men.
As a tribute to Escarita, we'd like to do his version of a blues standard he made his own. In a twist to the tale of lyrical revision, in this case, Escarita left out all the heterosexual bits you find in other versions by Willie Dixon, Muddy Waters, Howling Wolf. A song of swaggering heterosexuality becomes a defiant cry of the unrepentant gay man. Here is Escarita's message to the world: I live the life I love, and I love the life I live.
Live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live.
I see you watching me like a hawk, and I don't mind the way you talk. My sweet life ain't nothing but a thrill. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. My diamond ring and my money too. Tomorrow night it may belong to you. I have to try, but something's gotta give. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. Tomorrow night I may not be so kind. Tomorrow night I may change my mind. Tomorrow night I might be over the hill. I'll tell you, baby, the way I feel. If you see me walking, just let me alone. Don't worry about me if you think I'm wrong. For the sweet things in life, something's gotta give. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live. I live the life I love, and I love the life I live.
And that's the story of the birth of rock and roll, carried in the womb of the blues a king-making industry wet-nursed by queens.
Of course, gay people would always be at the centre of the action as the music took hold. The birth of British rock and roll and the swinging 60s are unimaginable without gay songwriters like Lionel Bart, gay impresarios like Larry Parnes, gay managers like Brian Epstein, gay producers like Joe Meek, and of course gay performers like Dusty Springfield, Long John Baldry, Kathy Kirby, and many more.
Like an aspiring young gay pianist who played in the support band during Little Richard's tour of London. A light went on in Reggie Dwight's brain when he saw Little Richard hit the stage. Escarita's torch of high camp extravagance and ivory-pounding rock was passed to Little Richard, and from Little Richard to Elton John. But the journey from Bam to Glam is for another show. Thank you for listening and spending this time with the Vinyl Closet. We'd like to end our show with one final song, a song that has become our unofficial theme. It's a song not this time from the blues, jazz or rock and roll canon, but from that other great source of musical gaiety, the silver screen. The song Secret Love has an obvious resonance with how we as lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people have often had to live our lives and express our love.
It is originally from the 1953 film Calamity Jane, a film which is very playful in its handling of gender roles and relationships. It was also revived 10 years later as a pop single by Kathy Kirby, herself bisexual and still very much in the closet at the time.
Nevertheless, the song's rousing climax reminds us of how far we have come. Thanks once again for listening.
And remember, live the life you love and love the life you live.
I shout it from the highest hill. I've even sold the golden daffodils that once I had a secret love that lived within the heart of me. To be free, so I told a friendly star the way that dreamers often do, just how wonderful